Today I am here with my colleagues Diego Tamburrini, Riccardo Pinotti, and Marci Zarei to talk about how digitalization can help us to reach a more circular built environment. Ricardo, your research focuses on prefabricated facades, and lately you are studying how we can go even one step further from offsite manufacturing or prefabrication to an actually industrialized facade manufacturing.
Exactly. Prefabrication enables us having less activities and then less time on site, hence reducing the disturbance for occupants due to the construction works. And then also a better working condition for workers. These are not the only reasons why we are pushing with the prefabrication. In fact, it also allows having a better quality of the final products, which ultimately results also in a wiser use of materials and hence less waste generation.
Besides, we don't have just less waste, but we have higher chances to reuse or remanufacture or recycle the waste produced in the off-site production than in a building site, in a construction site. And then the production site is controlled more efficiently than a construction site.
And which is the role of digitalization in all this?
So, for instance, having a digitalized workflow can ensure an effective communication between the designers and the manufacturers. For instance, data in a digitalized format can easily become inputs for CNC machines that then will cut wood and timber to produce, for instance, the facades. Furthermore, software can also support us in the design process. For example, digitalized workflow can help us defining whether the design is aligned with the standard material dimensions and potentially minimize the waste. Conversely, it can also identify whether our proposed geometries significantly reduce the waste and can lead to an efficient construction process.
And another advantage for designers is that they can simulate different scenarios, and then they can define the most sustainable or the most efficient solution.
But digitalization is not just useful for the design and manufacturing phases, right, Marcia?
Yes, exactly. I would say for the supply chain, digital platforms do a great job of keeping track and managing the logistic and transportation of the prefabricated components, and making sure they arrive right when you need them, which can cutting down on storage space on site. Furthermore, real-time tracking reduces excess inventory and also limits the environmental impacts of sorting and moving the materials.
And optimizing the routes from and to building site or construction site can cut also the emissions and the environmental impacts.
And what about digitalization in the construction site?
For the construction site, I will say a digital process enhance the on-site logistics and sorting the facade components. In general, streamlining the whole operation and boosting the efficiency in the construction. Moreover, robots can be used to put together the prefabricated components, speeds up the process in the constructions, and also limits the environmental impacts from production to disposal.
And what about the relationship between the facade design and building characteristics? In which way digitalization can be useful for this?
So having the digital model and even the urban context of the building, it can help us to define the dimension of the modules. And so the number of these prefabricated modules. And on the one hand, we can think that less The dimension of the modules determine also the number of these modules, and then less number, less transport trips, and less environmental impacts. But in another hand, the dimension impact in the weight and so in how we can handle the installation of these modules in the building site.
So this is why in a FESA project that we're working in, Legnativo, we worked in defining a methodology to find the best modularity and the best module geometry of prefabricated facade to fit a building geometry, also considering the urban context, and as well taking into account an efficient use of material and resources to lead to a less waste generation. So one of the project partner, Fraunhofer Italia, developed a parametric model to consider some of these aspects in the design. And so digitalization made such optimization easier and faster to apply respect to a standard process, especially when used at a design stage.
And what about the end-of-life stages? How can digitalization help us?
About this stage, I would say using digital records of materials in prefabricated parts can make it easier to recycle and manage waste at the end of the end of the life of the components, and potentially make it easier to create a closed loop.
And now in another project called Diamond, you are further exploring how digitalized workflow in the prefabricated construction process impacts on the environmental life cycle assessment and life cycle costing. Can you tell us more about this?
Sure. Digitalization in industrialized facade construction significantly impacts on life cycle assessment and life cycle costs by optimizing material use, reducing error, and increasing the energy efficiency. A digital tool can reduce the waste and costs in whole facade's lifespan. Moreover, this approach enhances long-term performance predictions, potentially extending the facade's lifespan and reducing environmental impacts from production to disposal.
Thank you. So maybe can you give us some final remarks in order to understand better how digitalized workflows in the facade design can help us to close the loop and to be more aligned with circularity principles?
Well, in conclusion, we can say that digitalization is helpful to reduce waste, streamlining the logistics and the manufacturing process, as well as shortening the construction times. So these improvements can lead to a significant savings in labor, materials, and the overall project costs, making the digital workflow more cost-effective respect to a conventional way of proceeding. Hence, digitalization can be the key to achieve better circular products and also enhancing the consideration of circular aspects in future projects.
I think this was a nice summary, so thank you all for the interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.